I did these communications back I set up these communications as part of Jack Copeland's team. Trying to send it to you. So I and I visited it so often with the kids.
So if you haven't figured it out yet today, we're doing a buffet. So we'll be here at about 12:15 to kick off the lunch program, but please fill up your plate. Hey, David. Number 10 to come.
Hello, Mr. President. Caught you with your mouth full. I'm doing fine, thank you. Hello, Pat. I thought I was going to have to sit up here by myself.
No. Away from you today.
Oh, good.
No, no.
Okay.
Hey.
Oh, God, yes. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
When's yours?
Today.
Oh, Mazel Tov. Okay. Mine was 3 days ago.
83.
Good. That's what I want to be like.
83.
83 is all.
76. I'm trying to adjust to that. Puppy, yes. I'm your child of 76.
Monty Clausen out here. Oh, Monty. I've known him since 1950. I transferred out here from Iowa. And his dad was a rotary director. And his dad recruited me out of Iowa, and that's how I met. Monty. And we've been friends already. Our kids played soccer together.
Isn't that nice? That's so
We're
special.
still friends.
That's nice.
And a number of people, our former students, Dave Gallagher, I used to spank his rear end.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know Dave. Yeah, you understand that.
I was 65.
And Doug Lowell, really new doctor, sitting one day talking to social. And he's telling me, he's local. So where's this? He said, Canyon Del Oro. When did you graduate? I said, 74. I was there then. He says, well, when did you graduate?
See, that you look good.
Hey, I gotta go, hey. Doug, you met, I was your principal. He goes, oh, Mr. Warner. I'm the hammer. I'm old school.
Isn't it fun, though?
Oh, it's great. It's great.
I mean, seeing you.
Oh. It's fun. So, Pat, could you have breakfast with a group of kids from CEO? We meet at the Seasons. Have you ever been to the Seasons restaurant? I haven't talked to anybody who's ever been there.
Where is it?
Miracle Mile and the Freeway. It's a whole movie.
Okay.
The restroom, they got a blanket.
Okay. So it's not something I should look forward to.
Well, the food's tight. Thank you. But the food's okay.
Okay.
It's just a hole. And you know there's something wrong when you walk in, and there's a sign that says cash only.
Well, you know, it's not stupid for the business to do that. They use a percentage.
We've been in and out of here since '59. Let's come back to Tucson. Great place.
I've been here since May 15, 1976.
Yeah, you've been around a while.
Yeah.
I used to watch on TV all the time.
Nice. They were talking about young whippersnappers.
Yeah, we're
Pat Paris.
once about a time.
Pat Paris is very, very smart. It was just really lovely. But he talked at the beginning, talked during the interview. He was a Christian. He was running around. His father was the general manager of one of my GMs. And he was like 7 or 8 and running around and getting into things. And apparently I took him out on a story and I don't remember. That vivid where I did these things standing in front of the camera and do a stand-up. And he says in the lead into the story, he says, she has no idea how much she taught me about working with a camera. And she said, I think from that moment that's what I wanted to do. And he's now continuing his angler film, which is what I was 40 years ago.
I run into these kids vice versa. Have kids. I've got students that are in their 70s.
Now that will make you feel old.
Yeah. So fortunate, Alfred was not good. To be able to. The world travelers. Yeah, isn't that wonderful to do that?
Well, the hard part is that I lost my husband.
Yes.
This was what we were going to be doing 2 or 3 major trips in Europe. But I'm going to do it. Taking my kids.
Health is, do it.
Oh, I
Do it, it's right.
Oh, I'm not hesitating.
Right.
What do you
A lot
want?
of people do. It's fun.
I'm not hesitating around parents and their partners in Paris. And Tracy, this trip Rob and I took them on, our 2 boys and my daughter-in-law, who was part of the family back then, in the early 80s since they were 15. So she was wrestling in 19, she was about 14 or 15. We took them to Paris and went to the house down in Provence. And so we're going to retrace that. And it'll be a nice remembrance for Rob all the way along. Yeah.
Have you lived overseas at all?
Just for 3 months. I lived in Santiago, Chile. As an exchange student for 3 months.
Yeah.
Back in college.
We flew in there and then we went to Rapa Nui. Went to Easter Island.
I love it. One of the trips I'm enjoying is Antarctica.
I haven't been there.
So
That's my
damn hard down there. And I know it's better than it was when I went to Louisiana. I had to go through Miami to UC Gulf, but I mean, there were like 4 stops on the way down. And I know it's better now, but I think I may settle for the Arctic instead of the Antarctic.
Have you been to Iceland?
No,
It's a neat place to go.
yeah, Iceland.
It's such a freezing place. There's 23 live volcanoes.
Yes.
Those things are going off all the time. Floods all the time. I mean, I didn't feel any fear, but it's really a wild place to go to.
Well, Iceland is on my list.
Yeah.
It's on my son's girlfriend's list, so I'm
Good place to go.
yeah. Would that be good, do you think, for, I mean, I would do it on a cruise line, so you can, on the ship, and then you can do a trip around.
And we just flew in and hired somebody to take us around. Okay.
Well, I wanted to do that to me,
Yeah, well, yeah,
because
Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying your buffet. Welcome downtown to the Tucson Convention Center. We're going to get started here. We got a pretty packed agenda. I want to start off, if I might, with just a moment of silence. If you could all please stand. We actually have 3 and very separate and equally sad issues. First, this is day 83 since Russia's unprovoked and unwarranted invasion of Ukraine, attempting to destroy that country. And with the help of the free world, they will not be successful. Second, very sad to report that past district secretary and longtime member of the Tucson Sunrise Club, Liz Cohen, recently passed away last week, actually. Really sad. And there's actually in the process of establishing a separate fund for her for college. There'll be some information that comes out on that later. And then finally, former member Clark Duncan recently passed away after a long illness. So if we could all just take a moment of silence to both recognize the brave Ukrainians who've given their lives and fight for democracy, and then also our friends Liz and Clark. Thank you. Next up, Pledge and Song. I'm going to ask Brandy Haga-Blackman to come up. She joined our club in February of this year, just a few months ago. Classification is Economic Development, Rio Nuevo. As you know, she pretty much runs Rio Nuevo, although Fletcher won't agree with that. I will tell you, as a past member, she's the one that makes stuff happen. And she's going to lead us in the pledge, and then the singing of You're a Grand Old Flag with our friend Chris Dodge accompanying her on Jen the piano. Brandy.
All right. Hi. Okay. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Time for that inspirational moment. I'm going to ask Kim Adair to come up. Kim joined our club in March of last year, Classification Community and Services, Arizona Bowl. She's the executive director there, and she is a proud NAU graduate. Kim?
Thank you. Good afternoon. You guys can all sit. One lesson that I've learned in my life is this: no good deed goes unpunished. I repeat that saying at least a dozen times a week, and I say it not to dissuade myself from performing good deeds, but to remind myself that even if I perform it, someone will probably find a reason to be critical. But that isn't a reason not to try hard and not to try to make a difference in the world, a world that desperately needs more good deeds. Teddy Roosevelt railed against cynics who looked down on those trying to make the world a better place when he delivered his inspirational and impassioned message known as the Man in the Arena speech. This speech inspires me to continue to work hard despite those that may be critical of new ideas and innovation. And so I'm going to go ahead and share that with you right now. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. As Rotarians, may we never give up doing what is right and what is most needed for our communities, despite the criticisms that may come our way, and may we inspire others to join us to do even more. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Kim, thank you. It's time to introduce our visitors and guests. I'm going to call up Chris Dodge, joined our club in February of 2020, Classification Entertainment Music. He owns Chris Dodge Entertainment, proud graduate of the University of Arizona, and we're going to be bugging Chris on some stuff later today. More on that soon. Chris.
Thank you. All right, I will introduce the guest, and when I introduce you, please stand up so we can recognize you and say hello, because that would be nice, because we're nice people. We're Rotarians, for gosh sakes. All right, so guest of Monty Clausen, say hello to Joni Clausen. Hi, Joni. Guest of Pat Lennon, say hello to Darlene Lennon. Hi, Darlene. Guest of Bobby Larson, say hello to April Walker. Hi, April. And another guest of Bobby Larson, say hello to Stephen Crawford. Hi, Stephen. Guest of Sandra Johnson, say hello to Raymond Smith. Hey, Raymond, there you are, over there. And guest of Margaret Higgins, say hello to Leroy Godfrey. Hi, Leroy. And thank gosh your last name's not Brown, because then you would be bad, very bad. All right, some people got my humor. Thank you, Loud Table. I appreciate that. Yeah. Jerry Hollowell, guest of good Jerry Hollowell. Say hello to Kathy Cohen. Sorry. Hi, Kathy. And guest of Vicki Jacobs. Say hello to Jessica Brewer. Hi, Jessica. And that's all I got. Back to you.
Thanks, Chris. You know, you always wonder if you have a punchline, nobody gets it. I got to tell you, I didn't get it, so I'm glad it took a little while. So that's great. That's great. So program introduction, we're back to doing the video, so that's kind of cool. I want you to turn your attention to the big screens and enjoy a special keynote introduction by our pals Rick Rose at Film Creation and Matt Russell at Russell Public Media. Switcher team, would you please run that video?
Andrew Tang, MD, is a professor at the University of Arizona's Department of Surgery, Division of Trauma, Critical Care, Burn, and Emergency Surgery. He is also the medical director of Banner University Medical Center's Level 1 Trauma Center, the only trauma center of its kind in southern Arizona. Dr. Tang received his medical degree from the University of Arizona and completed his general surgery internship and residency at the University of Southern California, where he completed 2 fellowships in surgical critical care. Dr. Tang joined the University of Arizona in 2010 and has established a successful trauma surgical critical care and elective general surgery practice with a focus on complex hernia repairs and abdominal wall reconstruction. He has been repeatedly named one of Tucson Lifestyle's top doctors, in addition to receiving the College of Medicine Professionalism Award, Clinical Excellence Award, and Alumni Outstanding Faculty Award. In addition to his duties at Banner, Dr. Tang is also the chair of the Southwest Regional Trauma Conference, the largest trauma conference in the Southwest. Dr. Tang has collaborated and published extensively with more than 100 publications and a medical device patent. In addition to his clinical and educational duties, Dr. Tang is also heavily involved in the patient care advocacy and quality improvement initiatives of the hospital. Here to introduce Dr. Tang is Banner Health's Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Chad Whalen. So let's have a healthy Rotary welcome for Drs. Chad Whalen and Andrew Tang.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting us here. I am going to take just a couple minutes to sort of set the context for our trauma program and the larger environment of healthcare that we live in. So Banner University of Medicine Tucson is really the partnership between Banner Health and the University of Arizona, and it truly is a partnership. Both parties make it exist. We are one of 2 not-for-profit health systems here in southern Arizona. We're the largest health system with 2 hospitals. We have clinics in 25 clinics in 3 different counties, 650 employed faculty physicians, and we train about 1,000 residents every single year. We are growing. We're growing rapidly, making strides in pediatrics, OB/GYN, cardiovascular care, orthopedics care, general surgery care, and primary care out in the community, and we're very excited about that. Part of how we've grown is we've recruited several new physician leaders. I'm just going to give you a couple of name drops from where they've come. Duke, Mayo in Minnesota, Oregon, HSU, Emory, University of Pittsburgh. These are world-class institutions, and we are bringing and delivering world-class healthcare right here in our community, and that is our goal. But in addition to growing, you know, in our DNA and actually really in our heart and soul is we care for the community within which we live. And the trauma program really fits in that, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We do that through all different ways. Certainly delivering care is one, but also partnering with community organizations to raise the level of the health of the community in which we live. And I think one example that I just want to highlight is with an organization that's near and dear to, I believe, many people in hearts in this room is JTED. So we've really recognized JTED as a national leader in what they do. And clearly, we're interested in what they do because they build future people who want to go into healthcare. And so we've been working very closely with JTED to figure out how we can partner with them and bring their new vision of a healthcare facility to life. And so one of the things we have done is a couple years ago, we started to be the sponsor organization for L-Tour right here in Tucson. And this coming year, JTED will be the beneficiary for L-Tour, and we're very, very excited about that. And I just want to thank and recognize your support for JTED, because again, what they've done would not have been possible without your support. So thank you very much for that. So, the past couple of years has obviously been just unbelievable. Very, very hard in healthcare, hard for everybody. And we've had to pivot and make changes left and right. But the thing that's remarkable is what you're going to hear about next. Trauma care keeps going. 24/7, 365, every hour, every day. This service is serving Southern Arizona. And as bad as the pandemic got, however you defined it, the traumas kept coming, and you're going to hear about this. And this team kept coming to the plate every single day, ready to take care of whatever came in the door. And so it is really a shining example of what we do, and it is truly a national leading trauma program. And you're going to hear a little bit about it. Obviously, you never want to be the beneficiary of it, and you never want a family member to be a beneficiary of it. But if you happen to be, you are in the right place, in the right hands. And with that, I'm going to turn over to the real star of the show, Dr. Andy Tang, who's going to tell you about what he and his team do for this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's so humbling to be in this room and have this opportunity to talk about our trauma center. And there's quite a bit of information I hope to get through to the audience. At the end of the day, my main point is that I want you to understand what a resource that we have in Tucson, that is the trauma center. And we exist so that we can be a service to everyone in the room and for our community. Now, I'm at my age, starting to think about health problems. 10 years ago I didn't really, I would stay up all day, all night, and take trauma calls, operate, and the next morning take my kids to go fishing or something. I think that's a little tougher, nowadays. And so I'm at the age where I start to think about health, no longer feeling invincible. I'm certainly feeling the challenges of the aging process. So I'd like to ask you guys, what are the things that occupy your mind? And I think it's probably fair to say, looking around in this room, that we're starting to think about the common things that occupy most people's mind: cancer, right? Strokes, cardiovascular diseases. But I'm going to make the safe assumption that very few of you would even consider trauma being a trauma victim on the list of healthcare concerns. It really doesn't come across our mind for the most part. Yet, I just went through the internet and just kind of grabbed the news clippings from the more recent few months. And here you are, bicyclists struck, pedestrian hit, a DEA agent along with another police officer were injured in the line of duty. That made the news. I think a lot of people probably have heard about that, right? We took very good care of them. Being a southern border state, we do have a number of patients who get injured as they try to cross the border. Not uncommon that we see this. Okay? My point in showing you this is that trauma really affects everyone in the room, yet it occupies so little of our mind that this is something that we all potentially face. So today I'd like to go through a few things. I'd like to talk about trauma epidemiology, but more specifically, I want to make it hit home. I want to talk about the epidemiology of trauma within our own Southern Arizona community. Okay? I want to talk about what a level 1 trauma center is. I think there's a tremendous amount of confusion of what a trauma center is and how is it different than a non-trauma designated hospital. And in fact, there's tremendous amount of confusion about what a trauma surgeon is. I think one of the biggest challenges that I face when I go to social occasions is people ask me, "Are you an ER doc?" Right? And that's because of the show ER that kind of popularized what the medical field is. But no, I'm a surgeon, and our specialties are quite different. And so I'd like to tell you more about what a trauma center is and what's it composed of, and the amount of resources that goes into it. And lastly, like I said, I want to hit home that I want folks to realize that this is such a wonderful, valuable resource that we have in our community, and it's something to be cherished. All right, I know people can't see this, but every few years, the Center for Disease Control will put out data on the top 10 causes of mortality in our country based on age. So without seeing the actual wording, I'll just tell you on the y-axis, it's ranked 1 through 5. I clipped out the 6 through 10 just to make it less condensed. And on the top, across the x-axis, is age groups. Blue is unintentional injury. As you can see, just based on the color scheme, that from the age of 1 to the age of 44, unintentional injury, i.e. trauma, is the number one reason people die. It's trauma. Okay? Now, from 45 years and onward, we start to have cardiovascular disease, strokes, and cancer precede trauma. But if you look at where the blue lies, even as we go on our aging process, it never falls down below number 3. And yet we don't really talk about that. Trauma is the number one cause of death for 44 and under. It never falls out of the top 3. Okay? Now, here's some national statistics, and I'll talk about the local statistics. On an annual basis, we're looking at 148,000 deaths, right? A third of them are attributable to car crashes. Driving is the single most dangerous activity that we do on a daily basis. When I had young kids, they're older now, but when one of them was an infant, my wife would say, you know what, the only way I can get Annalise to fall asleep is I have to drive her in the neighborhood. And it used to drive me crazy because I know what I do and when I know what I see, and know the preponderance of injuries are secondary to crashes, motor vehicle crashes. So understand a third of the traumas, deaths, are secondary to motor vehicle crashes, right? Speak to the importance of not drunk driving, not distracted driving, and we see that all the time, right? Now, just in the course of this quick 20-minute talk, 2 people, statistically speaking, 2 people would have passed away from a car crash, okay? Now, here's the other thing to think about. It's not just the mortality that we're talking about. We're talking about patients who survive their traumatic event, but they end up with disabilities, right? Now think about the cost to them, their family, the productive years lost, the psychological misery. There's tremendous impact. And it is actually one of the most expensive healthcare projects that this country undertakes. Now, here's the other thing I want to talk about. It's estimated 25,000 deaths are preventable. And I want to keep on talking about the idea of prevention, preventable. And that's where a trauma center, a well-working, high-functioning trauma center, can contribute to our community, right? Someone gets into a terrible car crash, and their injury is so severe that it doesn't matter how quickly you can get to the hospital, how good the surgeons are, how well prepared the facility is. If the injury burden is so heavy that they just can't be survived or saved, then the attack to that problem will be public health, right? How can we prevent that injury from happening in the first place? But what we're talking about here are the preventable ones. The people who come to the hospital and pass away, when in fact, if you assess the situation and you go back and say, you know what, if I looked at every single step that this patient took, here's a misstep, here's a misstep, here's a misstep. And they all contribute to an adverse outcome. Okay, I'll give you one example. I've got tons of examples, but obviously in the interest of time, I'll limit them. One example, we had and this case broke my heart. A 19-year-old girl in Sierra Vista was having some depression issues. She punched through the window, right? Okay, we all have kids. Some of us have kids, I would say, and we kind of know the psychological challenges that they go through as they age through the teenage years. She punched through the window, the glass cut her arm, and there's a very large artery, it's called the brachial artery in the arm. Under normal circumstances, if she were to be able to get to me, I can fix that vessel in less than an hour, and she'd probably be out of the hospital in 2 to 3 days. Now there's rehab after, okay? We're talking about survival. She went to a hospital that's not familiar with trauma care. They called to ask if they can transfer the patient to me. I said, of course. They drove the patient. The tourniquet that was on got loose in the back of the ambulance, and she died on the way here. That's a preventable death, right? That's the kind of stuff that breaks your heart as a healthcare provider. These are people who don't need to die the way they did. And that's what drives us to do what we do. We want to be as good as we can, not just as a hospital, as a trauma center, but it's a trauma system. We work with all the surrounding hospitals on improving their care so that they can, if called upon, provide the initial proper assessment and proper management until patients get to us. It's a system, okay? So the idea of preventable death is very important. Our 13th United States Surgeon General said this: if a disease were killing our children in the proportion that injuries are, people would be outraged and demand that this killer be stopped. How many of us in the room have felt that outrage? How many of people in the room are actually aware that this is a silent epidemic? Until now, hopefully. Okay, now let's talk about Southern Arizona stats. In 2021, our trauma center at Banner University saw almost 6,400 trauma evaluations. About 3,500 patients needed to be admitted to the hospital because the injury burden was quite high. Looking at the breakdown by age group, about a third of patients are over age 60. And as our population ages, we're beginning to see a lot more patients in the elderly category who end up as trauma victims, okay? As we age, we remain active, and we should remain active, okay? Sometimes that predisposes a patient to a dangerous situation, right? During Christmas time, I can always count on I'll get a number of elderly patients who try to hang their Christmas lights. It breaks your heart, right? They're trying to celebrate a festival event. They're trying to put on lights and slip from the ladder. And I can't tell you how frequently we see that, okay? It goes to injury prevention, which is something that we're very committed to as well, okay? Now, if you were to, I know the words on the bottom is a little hard to see, but I just kind of broke down by the more common mechanisms of injury. You know, what do people come in with from the trauma standpoint? The most common, you'd be surprised, is falls. People falling. Okay, again, that goes along with the aging population. And I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands, but I want you to think about how many of you are taking Plavix, Eliquis, maybe Coumadin at some point in time, right? For atrial fibrillation, had a stroke in the past, has a cardiac stent. Right? Those medications are great in one way, but it thins your blood. It makes it such that when an injury is sustained, you bleed more. And if that injury happens to be in the head, the bleeding around the brain happens a little more, which is very, very dangerous, okay? So falls is actually one of the more common mechanisms of injury that we see, followed by car crashes, right? And going down the line, you will be, I guess I'll talk about this here, when it comes to you know, looking at the trauma system, it's not just the trauma center like I mentioned, right? It's the EMS system working with the trauma centers. So the data that we have shows that on average, EMS response time, you know, let's say that there's a car crash, it's about 14 minutes. They'll spend about 15 minutes at the scene assessing the situation and providing some initial care, and transport time takes about 24 minutes. Okay, plus or minus, right? You know, if you happen to, you know, live right next to that TFD station, of course, those numbers are going to be cut down. But if you happen to live in, let's say, Vail, I would have said Vail before, like 20 years ago when I used to drive out there to go four-wheel in my Jeep when it was just pure dirt, and now it's a sprawling city, But yeah, certain areas of Vail are still underserved. You're right. Okay. Now, we see about 150 bicycle crashes per year. Okay. About 600 patients are under the age of 15, pediatric patients. Okay. And we see a number of child abuse cases. Again, something we work hard with our pediatric colleagues and pediatrician colleagues to prevent. Okay. Now, this may be a statistic that you would not like to hear. 12% of the trauma volume that we see are due to gunshot wounds and knife wounds. So 12% of 6,500, you do the calculations quite high, we see a couple of gunshot wounds a day, okay? Now, we see burn as well. Here's the thing about burn patients. We take very good care of them, and it requires specialized medical expertise in addition to equipment and nursing care. There was a time when any burn patients would be sent up to Maricopa, right? Now, understand that 90% plus of patients with burn can be managed as an outpatient. So what happens? Well, these patients get sent to Maricopa. They're separated from their family. There's additional expenses occurred for the transport, the separation, the loss of work, in addition to what simply needs to be for the injury itself, because of the distance and the extra time has to be taken off for follow-up. That is now all eliminated because we have dedicated ourselves to building a burn center with the required expertise. So patients who get burned can be taken care of locally at their own hometown. Trauma is an epidemic. It's silent. Again, I doubt most of you even really thought about it before I started my talk. And I think trauma care is much needed in this country. Okay, so this is where we come in, Banner University Medical Center. This is a facility for as long as I remember, and I did medical school here, and there's a couple of legends actually. Mark, you're one of them, and Mr. Duvall, you're the other, that I just learned has a deep, deep history with the University Medical Center. I say UMC because that's what it used to be, and probably a lot of us who I see you shaking your heads, that's what you remember it as, UMC. Right? And there are times when I have to correct myself, UMC, in this banner, right? So my point is, this is one facility that's, through thick and thin, has always dedicated itself to providing trauma care. And trauma care is not easy, it's not cheap, and it takes a lot of effort to maintain, okay? But it's always been there. And there's dedicated physicians, staff, there's specialized training, there's specialized equipment, et cetera, that's solely dedicated for trauma. Okay, we have a trauma bay specifically dedicated for trauma patients with all the necessary equipment that's needed for quick assessment and treatment. Okay, and I'll go into a little more about what it means to be a trauma center. We're available 24/7, 365. I don't know how many birthdays and Christmas and whatever other holidays I have missed, because there's commitment that I've made that this is the line of work that I'm dedicated to, and there are certain sacrifices that come with it, okay? As with my partners, we're available to the community 24/7, 365, okay? And this is the only American College of Surgeon verified level 1 trauma center in Southern Arizona. The only one. Up in Phoenix, there are like 12 or something. It's almost too much. It is too much. Okay, so what is a American College of Surgeons verified level 1 trauma center? Right, that begs the question. How is that different from Tucson Medical Center or any other medical center in this town? What is a trauma center? Okay, so let me take you just through a little history. In 1976, there was an orthopedic surgeon. His name is Dr. Steiner. He was piloting this little plane with his 4 children and his wife, and they crashed in the fields of Nebraska. His wife passed away at the scene. He had 4 kids, 3 of whom were very injured. He provided some basic care at the scene. He was able to flag down a car, and they drove him to the nearest local hospital. And he was completely appalled and disgusted by the lack of expertise that this hospital provided to him and his children. And therefore, he went on and he went to the American College of Surgeons, which is our governing body for surgeons. And he says, this is ridiculous. He said, how can the care that I provide to my injured family members be better in a cornfield than what they received at an hospital? And up till that moment in time, there were no standards on trauma care. There's no standard of care. There was no such thing, and there's no verification of a hospital to be recognized as qualified to take care of trauma patients. Okay? Up till then, it was a free-for-all. But that changed because of Dr. Steiner's experience and his advocacy. He wanted to use his personal horrendous experience and make something good of it for the community. Okay, and that's when the American College of Surgeons took on this idea and says, let's standardize trauma care. Let's create expectations for a hospital to meet. Let's create a verification process so that we can make sure a hospital actually meets the criteria to be recognized to take care of trauma patients, right? If you have cancer, you like to go to a cancer hospital that kind of specializes in that, or at least with expertise there. Same thing. If you're injured, and I talked about the prevalence of injury among our community, right? You like to go to a place with dedicated expertise, right? I don't let my roofer work on my kitchen top. The same kind of reason, you got to have the right people do the right work for you, especially when it comes to health, our bodies, our families, ourselves. Okay, so this book is our Bible, and it lists all the standards and expectations. And this Committee on Trauma was created, and now there's 1 through 5 level trauma centers. Level 1 is the most capable, most scrutinized, if you will, and most rigorous to get through that verification process. So does it help? So I'll quickly tell you about a study. So after this whole regionalization of trauma and creation of a trauma standardization and verification process, what we start to see is studies come out to see if this is working, or is this just a pure bureaucratic exercise. And what they found was, I talked about the concept of preventable deaths. So this took place in San Diego County. The authors looked at a number of patients who passed away, mortalities. And they analyzed the chart, and they made a determination, was this death a preventable death or a non-preventable death? And what they found that is that prior to the regionalization of trauma centers, 34% of patients were deemed as preventable. Their death had been deemed as preventable. Post, 15%, okay? 50% drop. And there's multiple other studies that corroborate with this. So it works. And it's estimated that 20 to 40% of deaths can be prevented if the system works the way it should be working. Okay, I'll move on fairly quickly because I know that time is of the essence. So how does a trauma center differ from the other hospitals? Okay, so here's how they differ. And I'll just kind of quickly read them. We have 10 trauma surgeons. At one point in time, we had 6. And we staffed the hospital 24/7, 365. We were always there. We spend more time at the hospital than with our own families. Okay? There's a professional dedication. We love what we do. We care about what we do. And we care about the people who we serve and the community that we serve. Okay? Right now we have 10 surgeons. We're all trained, right, in trauma. After med school, I did a 5-year general surgery residency. I did a fellowship in thoracic foregut, and then I did a fellowship in trauma and critical care. Okay, it took me 7 years to get to the expertise in order for me to serve you as a trauma surgeon. Okay, we have 10 of those. We have 24/7 coverage by surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, interventional radiologists, emergency medicine physicians, anesthesia. I can go on and on. The point is, anything and everything that can possibly be needed at a moment's notice is available. How many of you guys have tried to call your dentist, at night, and you go through this phone line, and 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, you get a phone call back? Well, if you're a trauma victim, you sure as hell don't want to deal with that, okay? You want your surgeon to be at the door ready to receive you and lay his hands on you and take care of you. Okay, that's what Banner offers. Okay, that's what a trauma center offers, what a American College of Surgeons Verified Trauma Center offers. All the resources, okay? Radiology, operating room, I can literally take a patient from the trauma bay to the operating room within 5 minutes. The minute they come, I say, you know what, they're bleeding to death. Let's go operate. It literally takes me 5 minutes. And there's a cooler of blood with 6 units of blood, 6 units of plasma, 1 unit of platelet, trailing me along to the operating room. That's the readiness that we're talking about, okay? I'm not trying to impress you, but I want you to recognize that it's resources that we devote to the community for the betterment of all of us, me included. All right. More stuff. There's obviously, unrelenting support from the administration on trauma care. As I mentioned, and as Mr. Duval and Mark, this hospital has gone through some ups and downs with our trauma program and the support for trauma. But we've never left the game. We've always been there through thick and thin. Okay, the administration had always been there to support. There's a very rigorous quality improvement process. Okay, we do a good job. Do we do a perfect job every time? I'd be a liar if I told you we did a perfect job every time. Am I going to look at you in the eye and say I do a good job and perfect most of the time? I can't do that. I can't look at you in the eye and confidently tell you that. But for the times when it's not perfect, when it's just good enough or barely good enough, it's not good enough for me. So there is a very rigorous QI process. We analyze all the things that could have been done better on a weekly basis. Okay? Whole purpose is to be best, to be as good as we can be. The price is too high otherwise. Okay? Now, there's collaboration with emergency medical services. We work with Tucson Fire, any fire department around here, whether it's flight or ground, all the agencies we work with, Northwest, Golder Ranch, even a lot of the small peripheral hospitals or peripheral agencies in the underserved areas around Tucson. Okay, so I'm almost done. So the question is, how do you do? How do we do? I told you I think I do pretty good. When I say I, we mean the collective I, the trauma center. But you got to prove it, right? I can't just say things. I got to prove it. Okay, so I mentioned that we're part of the American College of Surgeons. We're a verified trauma center. And in that process, we are obligated to submit our data to the American College of Surgeons so it can be assessed and compared to our counter hospitals around the country, to all the other level 1 trauma centers around the country. We benchmark against everyone else. How do we do? The number on the bottom says 0.87. This is mortality. This is telling you if you came to this hospital as a trauma victim, trauma patient, you have doing the math, 18% less chance of dying compared to any other level 1 trauma centers in the country. Well, maybe a more accurate way of stating it would be compared to the collective average of level 1 trauma centers. Okay, you have a 18% improved chance of survival. Come into your local hospital at Banner. Something to be proud of, really. Looking at every other benchmarked points, I know on the bottom you can't see, but this is the likelihood of complications happening. I think on the first one on the left, it says 0.68. Is that right? 0.68. In other words, if I were to translate this statistical language to you, it means you have a 32% less likelihood of having complications when you come to Banner University Medical Center as a trauma patient when compared to other level 1 trauma centers in the country. Okay? Something to be proud of. You're in a good place with a good hospital, with a great service line that's dedicated to you. Okay, research. Research is important as well. We contribute to the understanding of disease, of hemorrhage, of sepsis, all the things that goes into trauma. Right? We've published about 50 publications on an annual basis and secured quite a bit of funding from different agencies to conduct research so we can not just do better now, but learn so we can do better in the future. Okay. There's a lot of outreach, right? I mentioned trauma is taking care of patients now, but it's also taking care of patients that hopefully they don't ever come as a trauma patient. Right? So there's a lot of outreach programs that we do, distracted driving, drunk driving, talking to high school kids, wintertime, about ladder safety, Thanksgiving time, safety with cooking, the deep fryer stuff. There's all kinds of programs that we do on a regular basis, and we collaborate with different agencies as well, right? Drowning for children, all the things that we care about and want to prevent and don't ever want to see. Okay, so some pictures, Mountain View High School. I work with the Tucson Police Department on a fairly regular basis, me giving a lecture to their SWAT team. Arizona Distracted Driving Summit. One of my partners, Dr. Randy Fries, and some of you may have voted for him or voted against him. He's a great guy, despite your political leaning, but he's an honest, good guy, right? Politics aside, sometimes it gives me a headache too, but he's just a good guy when it comes down to it. And he proposed this helmet law in Arizona. It's a bill that never went through. We know that when you ride without a helmet on the motorcycle and you crash, you have a 50% increased likelihood of death if you don't wear a helmet. 50% increase likelihood of death. And so Randy tries to propose this bill when he was in Congress. Of course, it got shot down. But these are things that we do from all fronts, right? We run the Southwest Regional Trauma Conference, about 500 attendees on an annual basis, largely EMS, so we can keep that communication, keep the education to collectively get better. Okay, Stop the Bleed. I don't know how many of you guys are aware of Stop the Bleed course. That's a whole lecture on its own, but it's a free course that we provide to the community, to your business, to schools, to churches, to teach patients or people, the average Joe, non-medical person, the basics to stop hemorrhage, because we know from the recent and all the past shooting events, mass shooting events, that many of the victims suffered preventable deaths, okay? If they just knew how to put on a tourniquet, if they just knew how to put pressure on a wound, okay? These are free courses that we offer out of our own free time, okay? So, something that keep in mind, if you have any interest, let me know. All right, so last two slides. I think by now, I hope I impressed upon you what a wonderful resource we have and the dedication that we all have to you, your families, and our community, right? I feel that way because I grew up here. My wife grew up here. My kids are raised here, right? This is home. I want my home to be a safe place and a good place. That's where it comes from, okay? Now, my question to you is, if you or a loved one is hurt, where do you want to go, right? You think about that, okay? And I put this picture up because these are from quite a few years ago. My kids are much older now, and they're less cute because they're arguing with me more often. But, that's what reminds me, right? At the end of the day, you want to serve, and I want my place to be a safe place, a place that's well taken care of, that if they were to ever need, the service of a trauma center, the trauma surgeon, that I know that I've made it as good as possible. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
All right. I have time for a couple questions. By the way, Dr. Tang and your staff, I have a hip that's in place, and I'm alive today because of you guys. So, and I, as a personal thing, wow. Like, I've been treated by the trauma center. I remember getting off the ambulance driver saying, it's about to get crazy, and in a good way, went into the room, 15 people, it felt like, were right there at my side taking care of me. You know, if you ever been in that moment where you could just sit back and just be in total awe and maybe brought to tears by a sheer amazingness, that would have been that moment in my life. Of course, I was high on morphine at the time too, but thank you so much. Question.
So when paramedics respond, if it is serious trauma, will they necessarily head to Banner?
That's a great question. I got a couple of answers to this. St. Joe recently became a trauma center as well. Okay, they're not a American College of Surgeon verified trauma center, not a level 1 trauma center by ACS standards. Okay, I don't want to get into the politics of that, but so there's geographical territories that are now somewhat divided. You know, if within their catchment area, you will be brought to them, and within the Banner's catchment area, it will be brought to us. Sometimes patients do have a choice, right? If you're severely injured, I think you should go to the closest hospital, the closest trauma center, okay? If you have a choice, if you're not so severely injured, you can request to go to Banner, okay? And all the subjective feelings aside, that's exactly what I would do, okay? If you're not so severely injured at that moment in time, go to the best place.
Doctor, a related question for those of us who live outside the Tucson metro, Green Valley, for example. Something happens, you suffer a serious injury there. Are you going to be automatically taken to Santa Cruz Regional and then they make the determination where to go? Or if it's serious, is Green Valley Fire going to bring me up to Banner?
That's a great question. The Center for Disease Control has some criteria on what are the mechanisms of injuries and vital signs, blood pressure, heart rate, etc. And the suspicion for certain types of injuries. They have a criteria for when the EMS personnel, the paramedics and the EMS crew, if you fall into any of that criteria, they will take you to the trauma center. Okay. In fact, this morning I was on a meeting just to sort out those details. So there are what's called field triage criteria that EMS is supposed to follow, field triage criteria. Right? Now, if you stubbed your toe, you know, it's hard to say you have to go to a trauma center. But if you crash your bicycle and you are confused, you know, as benign as it could be extremely serious. Go to the trauma center. Okay? All right.
So I knew it was going to happen, that people are going to have way more questions than we had time to have answered. So I already have asked Andrew and they could stick around for a little bit. So if you've got some questions afterwards, they've agreed to stick around and answer that. So as they know, we've got a book that we're going to be putting into our Make Way for Books library. This one is Hear Your Heart. So that's pretty fun. Anyway, that'll go in there. Guess what? Birthdays. Got a couple of those. We're going to start off with Nina Trasoff. She was born on May 15th. She joined our club in January of 91. Classification is Consulting Communication Services. She owns Nina Trasoff Associates, and she is a proud graduate of Indiana University. So, did you know that Nina is a first-generation American, that her dad was born in Mariupol, Ukraine? And how about that she speaks several different languages, including Spanish, French, and Russian, and English pretty well, because she reviews my stuff from time to time. Did you know that she joined us for business reasons? And then after she stepped down for almost 10 years at K-Gun, she just wanted to get engaged, so here she is, and she's obviously stuck around. She stays because she loves the people in this club and the good work that we do, and she also takes pride in being our longest active standing woman Rotarian member. This is a cool one. To make our club better, she is going to continue to stay engaged, but she's also going to mentor our next generation of women leaders. So get prepared. Nina.
Thank you, Mark. One of the reasons I stay, I put because I love what the club does, which is obvious. But one example of what the club does is what we're doing for Ukraine and what Mark is doing of having us all acknowledge what's going on there. Because Mariupol, that just is falling, is where my father was born and raised. And then Donetsk, which has also been enduring hell, and before he came here at age 6. So it's very close to my heart. Another reason is what this club is. I mean, you really are extended family. I mean, I'm not going to say all of you. I don't know all of you yet. But those I know, when my husband died a year ago, the way you all were there for me was profound. The nurturing I felt, the support that I felt, it made a big difference in helping ease into this next phase of my life, whatever that is. It is a joy to look out here and see so many women. When I joined, the club was about 270 strong. And there were 3 of us, plus the executive director, who was the first member. And often there would only be one of us at the meeting, and I'd walk into a room with 270 men, which I didn't care about. It was fine. And well, some of them were a little bit hanktier about whether women should be in the club, but most everybody was really gracious. With the only embarrassing times, one guy tried to hold a chair for me when I sat, and then he said, "Oh, is it okay if I do that?" And I said, "Of course. Do you mind if I hold one for you next time?" And it's just that kind of awareness that having the presence of other, whether that be gender or ethnicity or whatever else it is, the more we get to know each other, the better we are as a society. I want to thank Drew Vactor. He was my sponsor. He and Candy are off elegantly camping somewhere. And I also want to thank Asa Bushnell, who was for those of you who've been around for a while, remember Ace. He was the first person who was going to propose me, but I was new in my own business at that time, and you had to have more longevity before you could join this club. And this was the only club I was interested in joining, to be very honest. I'm looking forward to being able to travel more with Rotary, more work in the community. I'm now 76 years old, and that's a shock to my system. But I intend to stay as active as I possibly can. And I'm avoiding ladders. I no longer go on the high rise to the roof. I don't go up on the roof anymore. I will still use a step ladder in a very controlled situation with shoes on. So those are compromises I've made in my dotage. So I am going to complete my second grandson's Paul Harris Fellowship. It is my Paul Harris +2. And this one is for Cooper. Cooper is now 15. I have 5 grandsons. They're this, and it's only the 7-year-old who's shorter than I am. So thank you all. I really appreciate the fellowship of being a part of this club.
Nina, thank you. By the way, did anybody pay attention when Dr. Tang was talking about blood? So for those of you last week that stuck around and gave blood, we're going to be doing it again in about another month and a half. So if you didn't give it, you still got a chance. We're not done with birthdays. We're going to talk about our pal, Pat Lenahan. Today is, Pat Lennon. Sorry, Pat. Pat was born on May 18th. He joined our club in April of 2004. Classification is education, rural education. He's a proud U of A grad. He is rumored to be the toughest principal that ever has been in Tucson, Arizona. I think his toughest task was taking care of trying to corral the likes of Jonathan Rothschild and Dave Gallagher. Some things you didn't know. Did you know that Pat was a consensus first-team All-American football player in 1958? Did you know that? Big guy, you had to. How about this? Did you know that he was recognized for bravery by both the Tucson and Scottsdale police departments by apprehending suspects? Can you imagine Pat getting his hand on you? By the way, he didn't even have his paddle with him then, which was kind of interesting. Pat joined because, like his dad, he feels giving back to the community is a part of his success. He stays for the friendships and the opportunity to work with like-minded folks like us. And what's he going to do to make it better? He's going to continue to work on a car show. He's going to ring that bell for Salvation Army like a maniac and walk around with his paddle. Pat.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to tell you something about Mark that you don't know. I was Mark's third grade teacher. The best 3 years of my life. Honest to God. It was wonderful. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Tom Strasberg. And this club is so, I'm so proud to be a member of this club. There's such outstanding people, such active people, bright people. Pat Patton, good example. Here's a college cheerleader, Texas boy. He became a University of Arizona economist, also El Paso economist. Fantastic. Monty Clausen, old Iowa boy, played basketball at the University of Arizona, went on to become one of the best lawyers in the state of Arizona. Jim Rubianis, another U of A guy, finances. Jim went on to be a Greek god financier, and you know, that's Jim. Last week and every week they've been talking about you guys, these fantastic fish, unbelievable. Well, hey, my wife and I, we fish too, and I happened to bring one of the piranhas. And, you know, everything else is a picture. This is real. And they are good to eat. They're really good, a little bony, but good to eat. Hard to catch. Very, very difficult. My wife and I love adventure, just love adventure. And it's so fun. We went to fish in, let's try it again here. Try to fish in the Amazon. And went about 90 minutes up the Amazon. We rented a barge for 4 days so we could fish for piranha and also explore the area. The first night out, the good old East Indian guide says, something jump in, because we're going to go out in the boat. Something jump in, don't jump out. Well, with me, I go, hey, something jump in, I'm going to eat it. Oh, no. Picked up the big spotlight, shines it out. Here's all these red eyes looking back. These are the caiman. They're the small, you know, the South American crocodile, I call it. They're only 10-footers. So we go out in this old boat, unbelievable boat, little horse-and-a-half trolling motor, you know, unreal. Within 5 minutes, a piranha jumped in the boat. Nothing to it. Just took that piranha, threw it out. Shined up in the trees. There were birds I've never seen in my life, snakes I've never seen in my life. It was exhilarating just to see these things. It was such excitement. The reason I'm talking about that too, I know many of you travel. You need to travel more. You need to do it now because one of these days you're not going to be able to. Now, 3 years ago, we were at Rapa Nui, Easter Island. There's a place you want to go. Get out and travel while you can. I want to finish in quoting one of my favorite coaches, one of my coaches' heroes, Jim Valvano. Jimmy V, 1983, won the national championship, North Carolina State. 10 years later, he died of cancer. He's made millions, raised millions of dollars. A couple of his quotes. One is, three things that you should do every day. One is humor, laugh, have humor. That second one, think. And the third one, show emotion. Show emotion. Get out there and show emotion. And the last comment, he says, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Thank you. Hey. I have a check here for scholarship. We can never get enough money for scholarships.
Pat, thank you. You know, I actually was on the Amazon myself in the Rio Negro for about 10 days and caught a pile of those guys. I didn't like any of them because every time I caught one, I had to throw my fly away because they would just destroy it. So not a big fan of piranhas. Peacock bass, I like those guys a lot. Is Gene here today? He's not here with us, so we'll save a little time. So we're going to hop into a four-way test award presentation that Margaret Higgins is going to do for us. She joined our club in September of 2005, classification, community and social services, substance abuse treatment. Recently retired as CEO of The Haven, proud U of A graduate. She's going to be our Rotary Club president and will step in, be number 103 in 2023. Margaret.
I echo an awful lot of what Nina talked about, and I'm proud. Recently, out with somebody, mentioned Nina Tresoff, and I was able to say, oh, actually, she's a friend of mine in Rotary, and this person nearly fell over backwards. You know, it's great, this friendship in this club is marvelous. But more than that, we are known, we are central to this community. We are central, and we recognize people who are in our community that have done wonderful works for the community. We have an internal honor, which we gave last week, Joni, and we have this one which is central to our Tucson, Southern Arizona community, and it's called the Four-Way Test Award. You'll see the banner there. So I thank the awards committee. I thank everybody that nominated people for the award, and those that didn't win it, well, you know, keep on nominating them other years. But for this year, I'd like to ask both Wayne and Mike Anderson to come up and talk about the person they nominated. And I think you'll find that this year, the awardee is of particular, how can I say, importance or resonance to us for reasons you'll hear about in a minute. Mike, Wayne.
Well, I'd like to thank Margaret Higgins and the committee and all of the Rotarians for this tremendous honor for Robert Bob Schlanger, who I first got to know through a school district. You've heard this one before. My first meeting of a school district, a 6-year-old girl came up to me and she said, "You're really old, aren't you?" So I asked her, "How old do you think I am?" She said, 106. So Bob Schlanger, who's the owner and founder of British Car Service since 1974 at 2854 North Stone, has been central to the beginning and the success of Pima JTED. We are so grateful that we are the recipient of the El Tour de Tucson. And not only that, we are central to the success of places like trauma centers because our central role is to train young people to succeed. And Bob Schlanger has been there since the very beginning, getting this passed by 11 school districts, devoting thousands of hours as a volunteer to making sure Pima JTED succeeds. When I started as the first chairman of Pima JTED, we had 2 employees. We are now serving 37 high schools in 3 counties. We have had 125,000 graduates. Our graduation rate is 98% compared to the 73% in the surrounding community. JTED students are more likely to graduate from high school. They're actually more likely to go to college. They're more likely to succeed once they do go to college. Bob Schlanger has not only served on the governing board, but was really the first president of the business and industry group, which was key to the success of JTED, because that was the voice of the community. How many medical assistants? How many registered nurses? How many pre-meds? How many construction? How many EMS? How many builders does this community need? And not only that, what are the new trades? We've launched drones, cybersecurity, robotics, based on the input of you and that group, and Bob was the first president. Bob is now the chairman of the entire Pima JTED, and I wanted to tell you, Bob is the last person to ever seek the limelight. He's the most modest person you will ever meet, but has much courage. And I'll explain to you, I'm going to finish with this. This is no easy task. When we started Pima JTED, 2 out of 3 young people in this community left high school. This is after having them from K through 12th grade with no skills, no trade. They often drifted for 6 to 7 years. Sometimes I ended up meeting the law enforcement people to no good end. And that's when we decided we had to do a better job. And Bob has stood up. You heard about thinking outside the box. Bob broke the box. Because when educators and other people said, you can't do it, it won't work, Bob said, we can. We will. So I present to you Bob Schlanger, my all-time favorite person. Bob, and then Mike has a few words to say too.
I got 2 words, or a couple of words real quick. I first met Bob almost 50 years ago when I went to his car parts store. I was buying parts to fix rundown cars so I could put them on a street corner. He's an extraordinary man. He's much like us. He's a car guy, just like we all are. Bob's wife, Marcia, says Bob always strives to do the right thing. Even standing out in front of restaurants and libraries to get signatures for initiatives that he supports. Bob shuns any kind of recognition, and his motto is, just let's get it done. Bob's community service in historic neighborhood preservation and as president of his local homeowners association board, as well as president of the Old Pueblo Streetcar Restoration Organization, are all significant, but none can compare to his work at JTEG. JTEG is one of the most important programs ever created in our community. It trains our youth to become qualified, skilled workers and strengthens Southern Arizona's workforce, thereby attracting new industry, invigorating our economy, and improving the quality of life for all. Bob is largely responsible for JTEG's success, and his efforts will benefit thousands for generations to come. He deserves this award, and here's our chance to thank Bob for his tireless dedication and leadership.
Well, thank you. What we did at JTED was the efforts of a lot of people put together, and I'm proud to have been there at the beginning, even before it passed, and worked on the campaign to get it passed on the ballot. A lot of people contributed. Wayne certainly was a major contributor from the beginning, and none of it could have been done without a group effort. What I love about this group is your support for what we're doing and your vision that I think we all share, that we didn't get where we are without somebody paving the way for us. And with JTED, we could pave the way for future generations for the next 100 years. So thank you very much.
Don't you love that? You know, we've got our award today recognizing somebody that was so instrumental in JTED, and we've got Banner UMC making an announcement they're going to help as well. I mean, talk about a serendipitous day, right? Just really, really fun. So we're going to power through the rest of stuff really quickly. Chris, we've got a raffle. I think you've already drawn a ticket. You probably want somebody to draw a card. Where are we going?
I already did all that.
Already did the card.
Yeah,
Okay,
I have the card.
So who's
and
our
the
lucky
ticket.
winner?
All right, look at your tickets if you bought them. It's 583683. Who's our winner? Is it Curtis Dawson? Nope, it's not Kim Adair either. I saw tickets being flung. Hey, Faye is the winner. And did she win the big pot? No, Dorina did not pull the big king of clubs. You got 5 of diamonds. I'll give you the card as a consolation prize. Back to you.
Perfect, perfect. So we're going to power through the rest of stuff really quickly. You see this painting up here? I'm going to call attention to my pal Diana Medeiros. Diana is a brand new member of our club. Gave us a commissioned painting, which was commissioned and sold. I think it was her first painting where they did puddles, and the person that bought it loved it. And this raised $5,000 towards JTED. Diana, thank you for that. It's time for Herb's Fly Fishing Fun. There you go. Look at all the people that are on there. You can see we still got a couple of spots left. All this money is going to go to the deck project at the Boys and Girls Club. So who do we have up this time? Take a look at this. This guy has been here a lot. Check that out. Oh, go back one. This was actually a fish caught by Mark in his backyard off of Oracle Road. I'm not making this up. So check that out. Very, very cool. That's his 3rd time in there. You can see we've kicked in some more money. We're getting really close to $10,000 for that fund. So thank you for that. Next up, I want to just remind you that to save the date, June 18th is that change of administration party. That's where we make a big fuss after Bruce, and you guys just ignore me. That's fine. I want to remind you that we no longer require registration for lunch. If you are going to be out of town, you know you're not going to attend for a while, what have you, please let Dorina know so we can adjust accordingly. And then, of course, if you are bringing a guest, you do need to register your guest. Really quickly, replacement mixer. Bruce, you got something to say?
Yep, just real quick is you can go in, sign up now. We're going back to Trident 3 by popular demand. Their food is awesome and plenty of it, so please go ahead and sign it up. And before I turn it back over to you, President Mark, just one comment. Did you notice that one of our very own has been recognized not once, but twice recently in the paper? The first one, I believe it had to do with somebody retiring or something like that from, maybe the steel drum band as far as orchestrating that. Did you see anything about something else?
First off, Chris has gotten a lot of really well-deserved recognition. If you did not know, he's been named the director for Tucson Pops. And we're going to do a fun thing at Tucson Pops. We're going to do a Rotary night at Tucson Pops. We don't know when. We don't know all the details yet, but stay tuned. We're going to go support him with that. And then probably one of the things that I think I was just completely blown away with, and I called Chris when I saw it appear, I didn't realize Chris's long history with the Joe Vert Steel Drum Band. And to see the tribute that those kids did for him when they came here and played for us. I saw you guys the gals up dancing and tapping your feet, and that'll cost you $100, Art. It's still a phone that went off, sorry. So it just cost you $100. Doreen will take care of that for you. But anyway, I just wanted to say, Chris, thank you. I think between that and the tribute that they've done and what you've done for the Jazz Festival, you're off the charts, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got a little thing on. Bruce, you have a little thing you want to talk with the hiking?
Yeah, everybody, we're going to get together and head up the mountain Saturday morning. We'll be meeting at the east side La Buzz, so meet me there at 7 o'clock, and we'll head up the hill and go for a hike shortly after.
Perfect. Vic Jacobs, I think you paid $20 for a Happy Jackson. What do you got to tell us in the next minute?
So I want to introduce you all to Jessica Brewer, Michelle Hatch's daughter.
Oh, cool.
I'll make this quick because I know we're a little over. So really, I just want to thank you all for allowing me to be here today. As many of you who may know my mom, also last year, you may have heard our story in March of 2020. Sorry, my mom usually does this because I cry the whole way. But in March of 2020, we tragically lost my brother Caleb a week after his 10th birthday. And so in honor to really just keep his memory, our family came up with Caleb's Assist. We provide athletic scholarships for local Tucson youth, greater Tucson, so all the way in Green Valley, to be able to allow them the opportunity to play sports, so to really enjoy Caleb's passion. And so Vicki so graciously offered for me to be here today, really just to talk to you all. We do have a golf tournament coming up, and just due to the generosity of, honestly, the Tucson community last year, the money we were able to raise from the golf tournament, we were actually able to afford every scholarship that was sent in for Caleb's Assist, paid in full. So thank you guys. June 3rd. It's June 3rd at the Omni, so pretty nice. And yeah, that was it.
She's got flyers.
I do have flyers.
Perfect. So you're going to stick around a little bit later in case people want to stop by and see you? That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so it's time to kind of close things off. I just want to thank everybody, whether you're here in person or virtually. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the meeting. If you'd like more information about our club, just reach out to anybody wearing a badge. I'm sure they could tell you everything you want to know, plus a little more. If you'd like to donate to our scholarship cups, those are on the table. If you're a sustaining person, thank you. Please don't forget to turn in your badge. If you haven't gotten your Rotary pin, you got to ask yourself why. They're at the desk. Mina and Pat, happy birthday to you. I don't know what happened to our buddy Gene, but we'll take care of him later. Bob, congratulations on a very well-deserved award, my friend. Next week, we're going to have another great presentation as we continue to talk about Tucson treasures. We're going to have Angel Charity come in and address us with Karen Farrell and Jill Brooks doing that presentation. So now for our toast and adjournment. Here is to those amazing folks at Banner, other emergency service personnel and first responders in our community who are providing trauma care. We're lucky to have you in our midst. We hope we never have to use you. We are adjourned. You're here.